The most insane punishments used by Roman emperors. People know the Romans for their great contributions to politics, architecture, art, science, and their unquestionable military power. However, that ancient civilization would not have been as successful without the use of fear to keep people in line. On the other hand, they had a sadistic taste for punishments to keep their people in line, which even was celebrated with shows. Welcome to the dark and twisted world of ancient Rome, where the most powerful emperors ruled with an iron grip and enforced the most heinous punishments on their opponents. And today, we'll take a trip through the streets of the ancient Roman Empire to see how people who broke the law were punished and shamed in public. You think modern-day punishment is harsh? Inmates in many states have recently filed lawsuits about the death penalty and the use of solitary confinement. We can only say that the prisoners are lucky they didn't live in ancient Rome, where cruel and unusual punishment didn't exist. The Roman Empire was a very violent place where power was absolute and people's lives were cheap. The Roman emperors had no limits when it came to punishing people who did wrong. Thumbs down. The thumbs down gesture was one of the most well-known and harsh ways to punish people in Rome. In the arena where gladiators fought, this was done to show that a defeated gladiator should be killed. But did you realize it was also used on ordinary people? In Roman times, the gesture of giving a thumbs down was called pollice verso, which means with a turned thumb. There are no Roman text or artworks that show what the gesture looked like, so we don't know for sure what it was. Many historians, though, think that it was done by pointing the thumb down instead of holding it out horizontally or pointing it up. The thumbs down sign wasn't just used in the arena, it was also used in the court. If a judge wanted to sentence someone to death, they would do this. Sometimes the gesture was accompanied by the words "kill him" or "punish him." Emperors like Caligula and Nero were known for putting people to death with the thumbs down sign, even for small crimes. For example, it is said that Caligula had a man killed because he yawned in his presence, and Nero had a senator killed because he fell asleep during one of his speeches. If the gladiator fought well or showed courage, the crowd might have given him a thumbs up, which meant he should be saved. But these acts of kindness didn't happen very often, and the thumbs down sign came to mean death and cruelty in the Roman Empire. Even now, most people know that the gesture is a sign of disapproval or condemnation. Brazen Bull. The Brazen Bull was a statue of a bull made of metal that was used in ancient Rome to torture people and put them to death. It was a very cruel way to punish people, and it was said that the sculptor Paralus made it in the 6th century BCE. The person who had been sentenced to death would be put inside the bull, which would then be heated up until the person inside was roasted alive. Emperor Phalaris, who was known for being cruel and sadistic, used the Brazen Bull to torture people. The story goes that Paralus gave the Brazen Bull to Phalaris as a gift. The emperor liked it so much that he had Paralus be the first person to be killed in it. The Brazen Bull was made so that the person inside could scream louder and make the sounds of a bull bellowing. The bull's mouth had a hole through which the person's screams could be heard as they burned to death. The Brazen Bull was a very cruel and sadistic way to punish someone, and it's hard to imagine how horrible it must have been for the person who was in it. Ddamasio ad bestias. Ddamasio ad bestias, or condemnation to beasts, was an ancient Roman type of execution in which a person was put in an arena with wild creatures and forced to battle for their life. It was frequently employed as a type of entertainment, with spectators cheering on the animals as they ripped the condemned person apart. The animals used in Ddamasio ad bestias vary according to area and circumstance. At various times, lions, tigers, bears, and even crocodiles were used. To make the animals even more violent, they were sometimes malnourished for many days before the killing. The condemned individual would be stripped nude and typically given a weapon to defend themselves, such as a spear or sword. Ddamasio ad bestias' purpose was not to offer a fair fight, but rather to provide a gory show for the audience. Ddamasio ad bestias was sometimes employed as a punishment for certain crimes such as treason or murder. The killing of the early Christian martyrs in the Colosseum is one of the most renowned episodes of this. As the spectators applauded their deaths, the Christians were put to the lions and other wild creatures. The tragedy was intended to serve as a warning to other Christians, but it instead strengthened the faith of those who witnessed the executions. Lead pouring. In ancient Rome, people who were seen as enemies of the state were put to death by having lead poured on them. This was a horrible and painful way to die. It was done by pouring molten lead down the throat of the person on death row, causing them to die slowly and painfully. Lead pouring was usually done to punish people who had done treason, but it was also used in other situations where the state wanted to set an example. People thought it was a particularly humiliating form of punishment because the person was often paraded through the streets as a warning to others before being put to death. The lead pouring process was made to cause as much pain and suffering as possible. The person on death row would be made to lie on their back, and a funnel would be put in their mouth. The executioner would then pour molten lead into the funnel, causing it to flow down the person's throat and into their stomach. As the lead cooled, it hardened inside the person's body, causing terrible pain and killing them in the end. Lead pouring was both a way to punish people and a show for the public. It was often done in front of a large crowd who would watch as the person being punished writhed in pain. People thought this was the way for the state to show how powerful and in charge it was over the people. The Emperor Ddamasio utilized this punishment, pouring lead down the throats of his opponents and even members of his own family. Sawing. Ancient Rome executed criminals by sawing. It was slow and painful to inflict maximum agony on the condemned. Sawing entailed tying the condemned upside down to a wooden frame or tree. Starting at the groin, the executioner sawed through the body. The condemned would suffer excruciating anguish as the saw ripped through flesh and bone. The individual would slowly bleed to death as their body was cut in half over hours. Due to its brutality, sawing was regularly employed to execute treason and murderers. As a warning, public sawings were used to scare and frighten the community. Sawing was a common means of execution in ancient Rome and elsewhere. Before the sawing, the condemned person would die from shock or blood loss. To prolong their misery, they were fed vinegar or other substances. Caligula used this horrible punishment, and people say that he liked to watch it. Sawing was also used as a way to kill people by other emperors like Nero and Commodus. Peina culae. Peina culae, or the punishment of the sack, was another strangely specific way to be killed. In ancient Rome, it was used when someone killed his or her parents or another close family member. The person who was sentenced to death was sewn into a leather sack with a dog, a monkey, a snake, and a rooster. The whole bag was then thrown into some water. If the animals didn't kill the person who is thought to have killed, the drowning would. Leather peeling. The Assyrians and subsequently the Romans both made use of torture in their legal systems. The offender poured boiling water over the victim. The person carrying out the execution then got a knife and began to tear the victim's flesh off of their body, starting at the feet and working their way up to the head. The severity of the wounds and the amount of skin that was removed both played a role in determining who would die. That's all for today, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking and thought-provoking content, and we'll see you in the next video.